It never stops in the NFL. We go straight from the Super Bowl to draft talk. Mike Renner covers that for Pro Football Focus at PFF. He is on Twitter at PFF_Mike, and he's with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. What is up, Mike? How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, we appreciate all the time you've always spent with us. So much focus in a draft is frequently on quarterback because it is almost always a need at the top of the draft, and it's the names most people recognize. This has been labeled as not a great quarterback draft. Would you agree with that that thought? And is there a comparison over the years to what this quarterback draft might look like?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. One of my colleagues here at PFF, Seth Galina, I think put it best that there's just a bunch of QB3s in this class. Like,
wow.
I think a lot of guys who in any other class you would be fine with kind of that second, third tier of quarterback. But because there's not a tier ahead of them in this class, they're getting pushed up. And so to me, it reminds me a lot of, or to a degree of like 2013, which that year was E.J. Manuel, the only first rounder. Geno Smith was the other one who was kind of getting hyped as possibly a first rounder. And then kind of at the end of the day, look back in 4 years after that draft and you're like, why do we hype these guys up? It's because there's not really any guy who really has that complete all-around skill set that you think is going to translate to the NFL. All these guys, that top group of guys in this 2022 class, all have serious concerns in one shape or another.
In your top 50 here, you've got edge rusher Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan at number 1, which a lot of people have him at their top of their board. I love who you've got number 2, though. I think this guy's a can't miss. Most people have him anywhere 5 to 10. I haven't seen him this high, but Kyle Hamilton, the safety out of Notre Dame.
Yeah, to me, the argument with him is like positional value. Where are you going to draft him? It's not how good is that guy going to be. Is he going to translate to the NFL? I think a lot of people are going to make the Isaiah Simmons sort of comp with him because they're similarly sized. Hamilton's 6'4", 220. Simmons coming out of Clemson was 6'4", 235, 238, something in that range. And both played safety, and both are like oddly sized for a college safety and obviously oddly sized for an NFL safety nowadays too. And Simmons had to move to linebacker. I don't think with Hamilton you do. To me, Hamilton covers ground better. He's a lot smoother, has a lot better hips. This guy's kind of like, to me, he's like a bigger Derwin James in that you can deploy him anywhere and trust him to get the job done. That's why he's number 2 on the PFF board. I really think he's a sure thing pretty much no matter where you play this guy.
Listen, I know how important offensive linemen are to winning football games, but they always bore me. I'm a Buccaneers fan if I'm always projected for an offensive lineman. And some people like Evan Neal. Some people don't like Evan Neal of Alabama. Where are you on Evan Neal, and what do you think a team is going to get in Evan Neal?
He's offensive tackle 3 for us, but I think that's more just an indication of how good the other 2 guys are ahead of him, Charles Cross from Mississippi State and Nicky Ekwonu from NC State. Like, all those guys are pretty much in that top tier of, like, top 10 sort of picks. You take them, you don't really worry too much about them. Maybe they have – I don't think any of those guys are really, like, completely NFL ready. We're not talking about Rashawn Slater or Penei Sewell here with either of those 3, but they are all very talented in some way, shape, or form. Neal, to me, just that size and athleticism combo. It's like it doesn't take too much more technique or too much more in terms of like reps for him coming out of Alabama to really project him to be a high-level starter at the NFL. And I think that's what you're chasing with Evan Neal and why he's likely to be the first tackle drafted because, 6'7", 350 and moves like a guy 50 pounds lighter doesn't happen every day. And that's just a very good starting point for an NFL offensive tackle.
Mike Renner is with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. He's the lead draft analyst for PFF, Pro Football Focus, at PFF_Mike is where you find him on Twitter. While we're on the Alabama players, how much will the injury in the national championship game affect Jamison Williams? It is a really good top-end receiver draft, I believe, and that's the last image, and now the workouts, he will not be able to go through any of those.
Yeah, it's definitely going to affect him, and obviously I think it happened still far enough away from the combine rechecks in April when the draft's going to happen. He'll be 4 months out by then. That NFL teams will have a good handle on how his rehab's going to project will he be ready at some point during his rookie year. And I think even if he's not ready week 1, I'm not sure it's going to impact his draft stock a ton. To me, it's going to be very similar to like a Jeffrey Simmons coming out of Mississippi State, defense tackle back in 2019. He tore his ACL not in a game, but actually working out prior to the draft, probably in January of that year. still goes 19th overall. So to me, Jameson Williams was in the conversation for the first wide receiver off the board, could have been a top 10 pick in the somewhat weak draft class with not a lot of quarterbacks. I don't think he falls too far, though. Like with Jeffrey Simmons, I don't think he falls past the top 20.
Sticking with wide receivers, as many as 6 could go in this first round. Your top wide receiver, Drake London out of USC, injury cut short the season, only played in 8 games. But watching USC this year, Drake London was almost like Cooper Kupp on that final drive for the Rams. I mean, you knew exactly where the ball was going, and you couldn't defend the guy.
Yeah, he may not be your speed guy. Like, I think his biggest concern is just, is he going to get open deep? I don't know. To me, he's reminiscent a lot of like his game and how it can translate to the NFL, like a Michael Thomas coming out of Ohio State, and what he does with the Saints, where it's just like, you can just pepper this guy target underneath, intermediate, and he'll move the chains consistently. He's the prototypical possession wide receiver. And so while he may not be everything you want at the position, like, you know what he does well is going to translate to the NFL. And like you said, they just threw the ball to him every single time, and it really didn't matter if a guy was hanging all over him or if he was open. He was going to come down with it.
When you look at Alabama in the past in the draft, it's been such a storyline. It looks a little bare. I look at your mock draft. There's a little, it seems to be a little Alabama light. Well, what do you think of the guys coming out of Alabama as a whole? And do you think that this is not a trend that Alabama will start filling up the first round again?
Yeah, I mean, they still got 2 first-rounders, at least, possibly 3. Christian Harris, the linebacker, goes in the first round. Like, it's calling that a down year is pretty indicative of the state of Alabama football, you know. Like, oh, you're not breaking the record for most first-rounders this year. Woe is me. But, no, I do think that 3 is about the least you'll ever see from Alabama. Next year coming out, you'll definitely see that upturn once again.
Okay. Good news for Alabama. They're not going anywhere.
Alabama's not going anywhere.
Fine. They're fine.
Well, I mean, we saw it in the national championship game. You see all these Georgia players in the first round. It's a little different than what we've seen in the years past. So it's good to hear.
Glad Mike could put you at ease there. Mike Renner, go follow him on Twitter at PFF_Mike. See him at PFF. PFF.com, talking about the draft. He is their lead draft analyst. Mike, thank you so much for the time. It is a pleasure talking with you as always.
For sure, fellas. Thanks for having me on.
All right, man. Take care. You too, Mike, with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.